And I would also tell them to remember that in the same way that failure is inevitable, learning is also available. You can take that moment of failure, that moment of weakness, whatever it might have been, and apply that to how you approach the future.
Hello, I'm Nina Westbrook, and this is the Do Tell Relationship Podcast. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a relationship expert, and a generally curious person fascinated by exploring the many ways we connect with one another. I'm here to guide you through the twists and turns of navigating your relationships with authenticity and compassion. Join me as we dive into candid conversations with health experts, celebrities, and overall interesting people, exploring their philosophies on relationships, life, wellness, and making a lasting impact. So grab your favorite beverage, cozy up, and let's explore what truly matters in life. Welcome to the Do Tell Relationship Podcast, where every episode is an invitation to deepen your connections and live your most authentic life. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Do Tell Relationship Podcast. I want to talk to you a little bit about today's guest. I'm so excited to have him here. I know I say that every episode, but I swear to you, I really am. His name is Michell Clark. And he's an author, writer, and designer who shares his story and uplifting messaging on social media, where he has an amazing platform. He has written the book called Eyes on the Road, and he has a wonderful podcast called After You Fail, which I really love and we'll get into a little bit later. And he finds joy in helping creative entrepreneurs find their story, find their voice, and share it with the rest of the world. Before he comes on, I want to get into a couple of questions from you guys. Megan, what's our first question?
Hello. Our first question today is, how can mindfulness and meditation help with stress management?
Well, that's a really wonderful question, and I bet you Michell can answer better than I can. But I want to start with my own personal story and my own personal journey with meditation. From a very young age, I realized that I did not enjoy being out and about in the world. Like, I'm not an extremely outgoing person, and I kind of like my environment to be quiet, and I love spending time alone. And I also feel like I really come to life, and my true personality really shows through when I'm with a very close-knit and tight-knit group of people, whether it's my friends or my family. And I found that whenever I was in these social environments, I had to secretly sit in my chair, do breath work, and kind of meditate and find some inner peace, because even though my environment is safe and these are people that I know and associates and you know, there's nothing that I was truly to be scared of or really to anything that could be, you know, threatening per se. But I just genuinely do not love a social environment. So sitting down and closing my eyes and getting into my body and finding out where I'm feeling anxiety, doing some deep breathing exercises and techniques to release that anxiety, I feel like in just in a matter of moments, even no matter how subtle or how quickly it is, I think that it helps to reset my brain and calm my nerves and really helps me to relieve some anxiety in that type of environment or situation. So I think that obviously it does work. I think there's so much information out there around it, and there are so many therapeutic practices that are geared towards practices of meditation and practices of breath work that there has to be a significant impact, right? So I think that in order for you to truly understand the power of breath work and meditation, I think, and being mindful, I feel like you should try it. And there's a lot of guided meditations that you can utilize free from social media. Then there are other places like podcasts and different outlets. And of course, I offer on benebynina.com the yoga series, which is all about being mindful and finding that mind-body connection. And our resident yogi, Ari Kodai, goes through a lot of different guided meditations. And so if you're looking to experience or learn about the impact of being mindful, you should definitely check it out.
I totally agree. And I feel like sometimes taking that moment to be mindful in the morning, to breathe, to meditate actually tells you where the stress is. Because sometimes we're going from thing to thing. It could be social, it could be work, it could be family. And you don't even know what you're stressed about because you're not taking the time to sit down and think about it.
Right. You just need a little reset sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Love that. Okay, question 2. Can you provide tips for improving communication in relationships? That's a big one.
That is a huge one. And I would say that one of the big things that so many of us kind of fall into is this impulse to respond and to react. And sometimes we're not really ready to respond and ready to react to something that we've heard that may have triggered us or upset us or hurt us. And I think that one of the key factors in being able to communicate is knowing when to communicate and when to have certain conversations, and just understanding who you are and how you handle different conversations and how you handle criticism or how you handle conflict is a really good thing, because you'll know and understand better what to do in that moment that will lead to a more efficient or effective way to communicate. So for me, if I feel frustrated and I'm feeling unheard or unseen or whatever the case may be in a conversation, I might take a step back and figure out if there's a better or different way that I can communicate my needs when the time is appropriate, when tensions aren't as high, or when I'm coming from a place of peace rather than a place of impulse. And I think that if we could all find those little things and recognize little signs within us by being mindful, right? And understanding what it feels like and what it looks like when we are upset or when we aren't really in a good space to communicate, that's a good thing. Fighting fair is one that I'm sure you've heard before many times. I think that we all know when we're communicating with a significant other or with a loved one, what their triggers might be, and certain conversations or hot topics that might require a little bit more finesse. So just being mindful of that and understanding that time and place is also really important. Again, timing is everything, not only in life, but in communication as well. If you are looking to have a good conversation with me or ask me for a favor, don't do it during morning time when it's time to get the kids out of the house, or don't do it at bath time at night when I'm trying to get 3 kids bathed and in their pajamas and ready for bed. It'll most likely be a no, and it won't be a nice no. So I think that if you can remember those 3 keys in your communication, to not react and be impulsive, to think about it and take time if you need to, understanding your own triggers and what that feels like and looks like for you so that you can use more effective ways of communicating your needs, and just choosing the right time to have specific, important conversations.
Timing is everything. I love that.
Those were wonderful questions. Thank you so much, Megan.
Of course.
We'll be right back with Michell in a few. Welcome to Do Tell Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm so excited to actually get to speak to you. I just know you as this figure on Instagram. So this is cool.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. It's funny, I was doing a podcast in New York and I walked past the sign for yours like 2 months ago. So it feels like foreshadowing.
Oh, good. Okay. Can you say what the podcast was? Yet or no?
If my memory serves me correctly, I could. I've been doing a lot of different appearances transparently, and so I'm trying over here.
Well, I'm welcome. I'm happy. I'm in LA right now, so I kind of will go back and forth to New York and film sometimes if I need to.
Love that.
Let's get into it. Let's get into a little bit more about you. I could say, oh, tell me about your upbringing or tell me about your life. But I kind of more interested in getting straight to it. So can you share with me one of the most memorable lessons that you learned growing up?
One of the most memorable, that's a great first question. I think one of the most important lessons that I learned happened after I got cut from the track team in 6th grade. And,
Okay.
my dad showed me how to run, how to pace myself, got me doing push-ups and sit-ups. And by 8th grade, nobody could beat me. And so I learned early
Oh,
on about just the value of consistency, putting forth effort, even being able to transform your body in certain ways.
I really like that. I feel like that is probably a lot of people share that same type of experience or feeling of kind of rejection, not making a team growing up and turning that kind of frustration into fuel and like training harder and practicing and working hard in order to kind of redeem yourself in your own eyes. That's pretty cool. Important lesson. That's a very important lesson.
Very much so.
When did you discover your joy and passion for writing and storytelling?
I think as early as grade school, like somewhere between 1st and 3rd grade. Do you remember they had the blue screen, like the MS-DOS screens, like those computers? This is like
Okay, wait a minute. Now don't know. And I don't want to know how old you are, because if this is something that happened post my experience in school, then I'm nervous. But no, I don't remember that.
I mean, first and foremost, Black women don't age. We'll put that out there. That's the insurance policy.
This is
true. Back in the era of dial-up internet, when, I had like 45 minutes tops on my computer, my parents had to take a phone call or whatever else. I would literally go and copy words off of a website and paste it into a document and say that I'd written a book. I wanted to be either an astronaut or a writer when I was in elementary school. And of course,
Okay.
haven't gone to space yet. And so I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be a writer, that I enjoyed reading, which led to me enjoying writing. And that passion for writing, and I think interest in writing, and even I would say gift of writing and communication, has come with me ever since in different ways.
Wow. Something just like, it's so crazy because what you're saying, you're describing my son right now. And it's so interesting because I feel like I was quite similar. I went to school. I'm going to tell you, the first thing I studied was English. I was not expecting that. I didn't know what I was signing up for. Apparently, there was some writing involved, but it was more like Shakespeare, to be or not to be. And I was like, this is not what I was expecting. And I kind of made a pivot. So was that your experience? Do you feel like writing, when you learned, how do you learn how to write?
Look, that's a great question. I think for me, it was always the reading taught me how to write. And
Okay.
yeah, and of course there were different moments when, again, I was big on, when I found my sport, when I found track, that was it.
Okay.
For about almost 10 years through my first semester of high school. And, then early career took over, and I came back to it eventually, but there have definitely been some gaps for a number of reasons.
That's so funny. But back to my story about my son, and you're reminding me of my son because he's 6. He'll be 7 any minute now. So he wakes up in the morning and he sits at his desk in his room and he'll write books. So what that looks like to him is getting all the white paper he can muster up and writing stories and drawing photos and gluing them all together. He doesn't have a stapler or anything, so he just glues everything together, and he'll come in the morning and show us his new book he wrote. he reads every night before bed. Like, can you imagine having to argue with your kid to stop reading and go to bed? Never in a million years I would have thought, because that's not who I was growing up.
I
But
love that.
yeah, it's so sweet. He loves to write and he loves to read and he loves to tell stories. So I'm kind of like, well, maybe, I mean, maybe he'll grow up and be like you. I don't know. That
Yeah,
would be wonderful.
better than me, probably. Also, in the era of smartphones, that is a gift for your son to be craving the ability to read and write. That is a testament to intentional parenting and, a special future.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was going to say, he doesn't really have a choice in the matter right now because he's still so young. Your daughter is really young. How old is she?
She will be 3 in August. And funny enough, she also will have me reading book after book to her.
It's good. And eventually she'll be reading on her own, and it'll be great. So congratulations too on your daughter. I see her on Instagram. She's beautiful.
Thank you.
I feel like a lot of what you share and a lot of what you have to write sounds like it's coming from a very therapeutic lens. And I say that I'm a therapist. And so I see all of what you have to share, and I'm like, it really resonates with me. And there are a lot of people who share their opinions and advice on social media, as you know, and it's not always great advice. So it's very refreshing to see things kind of shared in a way that makes sense to me. And so where do you draw that inspiration from, of what you want to write and the stories you want to tell?
I think that the things I write about and share, as far as social media and just different short form platforms, they at some point were inspired by things that I had to hear for myself. One of my lowest points in my life, I went to a military academy for college, got expelled from said academy. And so I was essentially in trouble and on that campus and isolated for about 6 months. Lost a ton of friends and just was kind of stuck to myself. And I had to talk to myself and figure out what I could say to myself to keep going in some way, shape, or form, to not quit on myself, and to believe in my ability to bounce back after the fact, right? Because everyone around me just kept reminding me of how I had made, some big mistakes, how I had essentially just messed up and quote unquote ruined my life. Because when you go to an institution that leads to the military, people assume their careers are set. You go for 4 years to the academy and you serve 5 years in the military. And so I had just blown up my 10-year plan, and I had to find a way to remind myself that things were going to be okay. And so my writing from that point forward, when it comes to mental health and healing and growth, it largely comes from the things that I know I have needed to hear at some point in my life.
Wow. I feel like your story so many people can connect with, because we've all been through experiences where, we've had to pivot, or we've faced these, maybe traumatic events in our lives. And I heard you say that, you lost a lot of friends, and that you felt like you kind of had to go through and experience that on your own while you were still there, and afterwards. So outside of your writing, like what kind of fueled you? Where did you find your inspiration in order to heal and to come back? Did you have a support system that you could call on?
I did, and I do, and I think it's changed over time, of course. But I've always had at least a few friends, even if it was two, in some seasons that I could call and just talk
That's
to
all
and
it
say,
takes.
"This is how I really feel," and this can't go on the podcast, but these are my true feelings about situations and people. I've been to therapy multiple times in different periods in my career, and I've grown to a space too with my parents where I can be more transparent and talk to them and get their perspective. I've been really intentional about trying to build more intergenerational conversations over the past 5, 10 years. As I've gone from, I'm 34 now, That late 20s to early 30s shift is really intense in a lot of ways. And so I've really appreciated being able to learn from folks who are wiser than me, more experienced than me, and just can see things that I can't.
You know, that's so important. And that's such a good point that you make. It is, I feel like we're kind of getting into that in between stage where our parents are getting older and we're raising young 3-year-olds and 7-year-olds and trying to figure it out. I also have 2 daughters. They're 5. So it's hard. Like, life is tricky. Life is challenging. And when we take on, we're already, parenting, and then we're potentially taking on more caretaking roles and helping our parents navigate this next stage in their life. It's so important to have a community around you and to seek support and advice and mentorship from people who, like you said, who are wiser than you, or AKA have been through this already, right? Because we're not the first to do it. So that's a really key, important thing that I think you just had to share there, which is really great. If you can pick like a mantra or an affirmation or something that really resonated with you and helped you through difficult and challenging times in your life, like, what would that be? Can you share that with us?
Sure. So I'm a mantra person. I try to always have some kind of thing.
We know you are a mantra person.
Oh, man. So I always try to have a different set of things to help me respond to different situations. I think one that really helped me a lot when I was at my lowest points is that this chapter will also end. I knew that I'd experienced some great seasons, some beautiful seasons, and even when I was in the middle of my really difficult seasons, when I was in trouble at school, when I was flat broke, when I was not getting along with people that I loved, I reminded myself that this season will also end, that nothing lasts forever. And I think that just it sets me up to think about the hard moments as finite points, right? They will inevitably last longer than I want to, because I want them to happen at all. But remembering that this will also end can kind of just help you to be more present in the moment and think about how you can make the moment better and move forward and get past whatever the thing might be.
I think that's a wonderful example of a mantra that kind of fits all, or can be used across different areas. I know it's, you like to have something personalized for the situation, but that's kind of situational. And all the time, it's useful all the time, like, this too shall pass. And just as a parent, I remember hearing advice similar to this. I was at a parenting seminar or something. I'm always talking to people, trying to, like, anyone who can tell me how to deal with my kids and how to understand this. Like, I'm a therapist and I love talking to adult humans. And I am such a rational, emotive, behavioral girl that, communicating with kids, it's not the emotional aspect of it is not something that is a strength of mine. And I'm also married to a very emotional person. So I've been working for years and practicing. But I was at this parenting seminar, and the woman who was telling us how we can manage our feelings and deal with our kids was basically saying, if your kid is doing something right now that you absolutely don't love, just wait, and that will change, and something new will come, and just hope that the new thing that comes, you'll enjoy a little bit better. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's right. It's like a week. It's like a week or two. If you're unlucky, a month, and then, they move on to the next thing that they want to try practice on you. So, like, that's kind of like a parenting, reframing in from a parenting standpoint.
Yeah.
I think my kids are putting me through the ringer, because all I can think about right now in this conversation is how they're driving me crazy, and I'm trying to, like, manage it. You're giving me so much therapy right now.
Man,
So
I'm
thank
right
you
there
for
with you.
that.
Ada right now is in her, I want to go to bed at like 11 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at
Oh
night. I
no.
don't want to eat no food. She's in her no phase, like no to everything. And so I
Uh-huh.
definitely feel you on that. And yeah. And the hardest thing is always is figuring out like, how do I not disasterize this and imagine this quirk, this one thing happening in this one season? How do I not imagine it defining her whole life? Like, is she going to be enabled or whatever else? And so I will
Oh
take
my
that with me
gosh.
and
Yeah.
find comfort in that.
It does. It gets better.
Yeah.
It does. You just keep practicing at it. So picking yourself up after you fail. You have a podcast, and I love the title. It's called After You Fail, which to me is emphasizing this idea and normalizing the idea that we will fail at some point in life, right? We're all going to, like nobody's perfect. So there are going to be times where things aren't going to go according to plan, and we might have to pivot or figure out, how do we move forward? And so the title of your podcast perfectly reflects that. The big question is how we respond in that moment in our lives. So what would you say to someone who is looking to find a way to start afresh or facing a big letdown or failure and doesn't know where to begin?
I think that I would tell anybody who is looking to reframe their response to failure to start by understanding that you can separate yourself from whatever you might be feeling in that moment, and that time is a really powerful tool to help you do that. You don't
Mm.
have to have the perfect plan or the perfect response in that moment, but you can give yourself time. You can move slow, you can react slowly, and in time you will understand what to do. You'll know how to move forward. um, and I would also tell them to remember that in the same way that failure is inevitable, learning is also available. You can take that moment of failure, that moment of weakness, whatever it might have been, and apply that to how you approach the future. It is a failure, and it's hard, and it attacks your ego, and it disappoints you, but it is also a learning opportunity. And I think that's where the power of failure comes in. After you sit with it, after you acknowledge all the feelings, all the pride, the hurt, the ego, and then say, okay, I've gotten that out the way for the most part, and now I can move forward with my iOS
Yeah.
update in the form of new experience.
Mm-hmm. No, I really love that. And I think that it's hard. It's so hard for so many of us because nobody, if you're like me, at least, you don't want to wait for anything. I don't have time for time. Okay.
That's a fact.
So it is, like you said, or even like what you said earlier, it's so important to find the moments and find the peace and find the silver lining in any situation or that you're in. And even when we do face those failures, like you said, if we grow from them, then it's only inevitable that we're going to become better, and we're going to do better, and we're going to know better. And I think that, ask any business person or anyone who's found major success in their life how many times they've failed, and just know that if they gave up or if they stopped or if they quit working, if they didn't pivot or if they decided to let that failure determine or define them, they wouldn't be who they are, and they wouldn't have found the success that they ultimately found. So that's a really big lesson for all of us. So thanks for sharing that. Life changes and navigating them. I have a question. So you've had some big life changes that you shared earlier, and from being kicked out of the military school a month before graduation and becoming an entrepreneur, marrying during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Everybody else was getting a divorce during the pandemic, and you were getting married during the pandemic, which I could see how that could be really amazing because that quality time and everything you get to kind of just spend together. Sure, it was lovely. And becoming a father. So what has been the key to your success navigating such major life changes?
Whew. First and foremost, we couldn't spell pandemic when we started planning our wedding. we had no idea that it was coming. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know this. It has been it's been so hard to be married, to become married, to become a parent, while also reckoning with the fact that there are these particles in the air that might
Mm-hmm.
that might hurt or kill you. Before the vaccine, it was really wild outside,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't know. It's hard to even think about what has allowed us to move through the past 4 years. Other than just the decision, I'm going to shock you by offering a different mantra that has guided me and my
Mm-hmm.
wife. It's we always say it's just us. And when we first used it, it was just us two, and now it's
Mm-hmm.
just my wife, myself, and my daughter, and that has helped us to come back to what matters the most to us when it comes to making a bunch of difficult decisions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we were supposed to have a full wedding with 200 plus people, and we
Mm-hmm.
were faced with the options of either pushing the wedding back for the second or third time, um, canceling it altogether, or eventually having a wedding with 20 people and
Mm-hmm.
disappointing everybody's aunt and cousin and everything else, and not
Mm-hmm.
having the dream wedding that you spend a whole relationship talking about and dreaming about.
Mm-hmm.
It was pillow talk conversation for years, and now we're
Yeah.
getting married in my parents' backyard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we my wife gave birth and nobody could come. I couldn't go to the check-ins until
Wow.
the 6th month because I think we were in Richmond, Virginia, up until um or sorry, we were in close to DC. We couldn't go to any check-ins. We went to Richmond. We could go to some check-ins, but it was extremely isolating, difficult, and it hit every sense of stability that I thought I knew, because you think you're going to have some key life moments that you have
Mm-hmm.
some control over, and we didn't have those. And so being able to say, like, no matter what, again, we get the feelings out. We say this sucks and things that I can't say on the podcast, right? Because it's between me and my
Mm-hmm.
wife.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate these things, these situations, these things hurt me, these things frustrate me, and then we reset and we get back to what needs to be true for our family of two and now our family of three. And I think just remembering that, even understanding that my wife can make me happy when we're stuck in the house for 3 years, sometimes that's
Mm-hmm.
all I need. um, and that when there are these difficult choices to make, at the end of the day, if we could be really close friends. We can go back a long time. You can be my hero, but I don't wake up and say good morning to you. I don't see you every
Mm-hmm.
night. I don't spend my weekends with you. I don't plan a future with you. To an extent, I see you when I see you.
Mm-hmm.
That is only different for my family. And so just remembering the need to truly prioritize the people and things that matter the most has been kind of my guiding light, despite everything feeling up and down and unclear.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, first of all, that doesn't shock me in the least bit. Um, Prioritizing your family, prioritizing your tight knit group of people, and making the decisions that are best for you as a unit, I think is the key to, happiness. I don't know. You have to have boundaries, obviously. And there's so many things that we're going to be faced with. There's so many ups and downs and consequences and obstacles that we're going to be facing. And I think that, having that support system and knowing that you're in it together and you're making the decisions and making the best of the decisions or the circumstances that are in front of you and doing it together with a teammate and a partner. And now the three of you is very wise. I think that a lot of times that we are seeking out information and trying to figure it out and trying to make everyone else happy and trying to, like, the wedding planning thing is a whole other thing. I could barely deal with my own wedding planning, and it was there was no COVID. Okay. So during COVID, I can only imagine, we didn't have an excuse not to invite people. They just didn't get invited. So you can imagine how upset they were probably.
Of course.
So I feel like, that's really important. You got to prioritize the relationships in your life that are the most meaningful to you. So that's great. Before we move on, before we continue, I want to talk about your book, and I want to talk more about affirmations, but we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. If you're enjoying this episode, make sure to follow us on social media at Do Tell Podcast for more behind the scenes footage and clips. Visit us on benebynina.com for exclusive e-workshops, wellness guides, fitness and nutrition resources, and my Do Tell conversation card game, all created to encourage a lifetime of growth, inspiration, and personal development. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, where you will find all of my past episodes and interviews with other incredible guests. Let's talk about your book, Eyes on the Road, which I love that.
Thank you.
Like, stay focused, keep it together, keep your eye on the prize. You released it in 2023, and it's a beautiful collection of work, inspiring work that is inspiring hope and healing for those that read it. Can you share something about your experience of writing throughout that process? Because obviously you're a writer, and you've been storytelling for quite some time, but this is your book now. And how was this process different than any other process so far?
Yeah. So I think the wild thing about writing a book versus most of your writing living on a Substack or on social media is that you can't edit it. Once you submit the manuscript, you can't take it back and say, "Oh, I meant to add this," and you can't respond to comments in the same place. And so it's very final. You decide that you're done and you pass it off, and it's out of your hands. And so for somebody who had gotten very used to being able to go back and, you edit a caption, you erase a post. Worst case, you say, "I'm sorry," and you erase it. I found myself in a space where we were in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy at the time. And so I'm in this really cramped co-working space because everything in New York is cramped. And so I'm sitting there, and I've drafted the book, and then I'm going back through like, okay, I got to make it the best thing I ever wrote. I can't take it back. People will see it. I got to be just the best writer of all time. Just Capricorn things just running through my head. So yeah, I'm in this very, very cramped space in Brooklyn, and just I got a little obsessive. I was just kind of going back to certain pages again and again. And I was also in imaginal therapy at the time. And so I'm, in essence, writing letters to myself in the form of my book and examining my past self in therapy once a week. And so it was a very, very, very intense just season cognitively. Me and my wife would go for walks quite often just to kind of clear the air and have space to breathe. But that was a very memorable moment in that I had both more control than ever. I was more aware of what I wanted to be true in my writing than my previous book. And I still had to get to a point where I was like, okay, it's done. It's good. There will be something that somebody will not agree with, but it is good enough to say, I am done, and here is my manuscript. And so that, like, honestly, the writing, of course, was hard and took time, but the hardest thing was saying, I'm done, and this is enough.
Oh, this is enough. Mic drop.
Yeah.
I really like that, because sometimes as a Capricorn, I like feedback. Like, I am so critical of everything that I do. And if it sucked, I want someone to tell me. Like, tell me, because I can do better if you let me know. If I know it's bad, then it's going to be better, I promise. So that was like, I was shook almost when you said it's so final. I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
I don't like that. So I can understand where you're coming from with that. And it's kind of like the perfectionist thing. And it's so interesting because as confident as I can see that you are, as confident as I know that I am, that seeking of wisdom and understanding that never like stops, right? Our ideas and our thoughts, we're constantly changing and growing. If I were to, I'm not even like, I need to go cancel my Twitter account. But if I were to go back and like look at the things that I was saying, when I was 18, I'd be like, who is this person and who does she think she is? So, I think that always like wanting to grow and evolve and knowing that when you put it on that paper and once it's printed, it's not going to change, it's not going to grow, and it's not going to evolve. But so that's really key. But guess what? I'm not like pressuring you or anything, but you could also in time write another book and, shift your perspective in the next book. We will read it, promise.
That sounds like a lot of work. I feel you, and that sounds like more work.
You have time.
I do.
You said it yourself. Just take all the time you need.
I do.
We will enjoy this one we'll make do with the one that we have. Okay. Becoming an entrepreneur who helps other entrepreneurs. That's pretty incredible. Your writing style can resonate with a mass population, which speaks to your huge following on social media and engagement and people who really love reading and finding hope in everything that you have to share. So what is it about your writing style do you think helps people to feel inspired, and what do they resonate with the most?
I don't know some days, and I have a rainy day folder in my phone that reminds me that people actually do enjoy my writing. And so I'll look back at the nice things people say when a dog Avi is commenting on my post saying it's all nonsense. I think if I had to kind of guess and generalize, it feels like people resonate with the way that I articulate problems and propose solutions in a gentle way and don't try to assume that I know an entire scenario. I'm also not trying to be a therapist. Like very specifically, I am not an expert. I am not someone who is a mental health practitioner for a living. I'm a guy telling his story and sharing things that I learned along the way. And so, I don't know, I think, Nina, I think I have a pretty high bullshit filter. And if I don't agree with something, if it doesn't resonate with me, I'm not going to say it. And so one might call this overthinking, but I am always trying to find...
It's authenticity.
Yeah.
You're authentic to who you are. And when you are authentic, people are going to see something in your story and what you have to share in their own lives. I think when the more vulnerable you are, or the more vulnerable we are, and the more authentic we are, the more people are able to connect.
I receive that. Thank you. But yeah, I don't share things that I don't actually agree with. And I think you were even talking about before, looking back at old posts and statuses, and I'm the same way. I will reshare certain messages if they actually align with how I feel. And then I'll go back and say, that spoke to me when I was 23 or 28, but I know a little bit more. My perspective changed, and I'm not going to run that back. Or I will add the necessary nuance to make this actually make sense and apply. And so, yeah, I think that is what allows me to speak to people, but I don't always see what they see.
And you never will, because none of us can. So I think that's great. That's a really cool perspective to have.
Thank you.
I know we're running out of time, sadly, but this has been so insightful. I love having these conversations on my podcast. I wish that I had the energy to do it every week, but it's just, as you know, I'm sure you know, it's challenging. So these are the type of conversations that get me energized and excited to continue my work. But before we head out of here, do you want to share? Is there anything that you'd like to share about any upcoming projects? We have your podcasts, your book that everyone can purchase, obviously, today. Anything else that you want to share about upcoming projects?
Yeah, actually, and I would love to send you one. I am launching a print shop. I have stepped fully into design, and so I have a whole series of prints that some are paper, and some are canvas, of just encouraging sentiments, things that might help you to remember who you are, what you stand for, and what matters. And they're at printsbymichell.com. If you hear this after Monday, give me 1 second. If you hear this after Monday, May 27th, the store is open. So it's at printsbymichell.com.
And it'll be in the description for sure. That's really exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you like, how does that work? Do you draw and write like with your hand, or is it print, like a typing?
So I've been doing digital collages. I'll find different elements, different things that I can legally use and arrange them. I'm real picky about my font choices and colors and things like that. So yeah.
Very cool.
Thank
Very
you.
creative. I really love that. And I'm looking forward to it. And I want to send you some of my cards too. So we'll get your address and everything. Okay. I like to leave every episode with 2 questions. The first one would be, what is the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I ever received is keep your eyes on the road. To look at what's directly in front of you, to not worry about the distractions, but just focus and be clear on your path and let that guide you.
Mic drop. That was a mic drop moment. Okay, great. And the last question is a question from my Do Tell card game. And the question is, what does living a happy life mean to you?
I love that question. We're definitely going to get that card game. I think that to me, living a happy life requires that you get clear on what makes you happy. Not what makes other people respect or admire you, but what actually makes you happy, and making space for that, plain and simple.
Get clear on what makes you happy. Well, what made me happy today is having you on Do Tell Podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe, follow everything on Instagram. Michell, can you remind us your Instagram handle?
Yeah, for sure. It's MichellC Clark. So Michelle with no E, C Clark, across all platforms.
Okay, and don't forget to visit the digital and art print shop, which you can find the link in the bio.